A rather extensive stretch in Savitri that never fails to move the reader is that which deals with the confrontation between the god of death and Savitri. Now, in this confrontation, death represents the established order and Savitri a new order that she wants to usher in. The established order that Savitri wants to challenge is the inevitability of death. And the new order that she wants to establish is the one in which death will be no longer necessary. So, in that sense, Savitri is a revolutionary, and the revolution that she wants to bring about is one that is the greatest that has ever been conceived by mankind. And therefore, when the arguments begin, it's very easy for death to sound very realistic and to prove that Savitri's ideas are utopian and a figment of her imagination. However, in the end, Savitri still wins, and that is because Savitri is arguing not on the basis of common sense, not on the basis of reason, but on the basis of the highest truths of existence discovered by the mystics and the rishis across the ages when they are at the highest level of consciousness. Now, while presenting these arguments, death employs a variety of strategies. First strategy employed by the god of death is merely to tempt Savitri, on one hand with her own personal salvation, the type of salvation that traditional yogas promise, and on the other hand to tell her why she wants to take back from Satyavan, the one whom she loves, the release that he has got from this world which is full of evil, suffering and misery. Now that he has gained the repose and peace that comes after death, why does she want to deprive him of that? However, Savitri does not find that appealing enough, and then the argument revolves around love. Now, this again is very easy to argue because love has many versions. The lowest rung of love is animal love, at which what one thinks to be love is actually a yearning of the flesh, and this carnal love, which is based primarily on the pleasure that a person gets from the relationship, is mistaken for love. Now, this is a rather selfish love and is based on a sensory pleasure, and if one argues on that basis, certainly love is not something great to boast about, and therefore death, the god of death, is easily able to argue that love has a fleeting character, it lasts only a short while, and he tells Savitri that you feel so much in love with Satyavan only because he is dead. If he had lived longer, you would have stopped loving him, and even now, soon after you return to earth, you will forget Satyavan and somebody else will step in to occupy the same place. However, Savitri argues on the basis of higher rungs of love. If we move from animal love to human love, it is based not just on the pleasure that a person gets from the relationship, but one also enjoys the process of giving love. So, it is based on a give and take. One enjoys both receiving love and giving love, but then that is not again the highest that human beings are capable of. They can move towards divine love, which is based on giving. One enjoys the process of giving love and enjoys love for the sake of love itself without expecting anything in return. Yet another strategy that the god of death uses is to show that earth in fact is unfit for heaven, and therefore the heavens shall never descend on earth. Savitri argues on the basis of evolution. She argues that while that is true of the earth as it is today, if we look at the trend of evolution, after the all-knowing, all-powerful divine limited itself in the form of the material universe, there came life, and then came the creatures with a mind, and the latest product of this evolution is man. But there is no reason to suppose that the process of evolution has come to an end. And one thing that characterizes this process of evolution is a progressively better revelation, a better expression of the divine in the consciousness of the creature. And therefore, she says that the earth is a work in progress, it is not a finished product, and while it may be easy to argue that earth is not fit for heaven, that doesn't mean that that is the destiny of earth. Just because there is a night today does not mean that the sun shall never rise. Just because a child is an infant today does not mean that it will never grow up. So that is the type of argument Savitri uses to show that earth is not always destined to be a place full of evil suffering and a place where death is necessary. Things can change, and earth could meet heaven, it could become like heaven, and heaven could come down on earth. Then death uses yet another strategy based on human nature. And the argument goes something like this, that man is half animal and half divine, and that is in fact the tragedy of human life. Love is a treasure that has been wasted on man by God, and man is unfit to face the truth, and therefore he is destined to stay in this state of ignorance, and therefore things will never change. Now Savitri argues on the basis of the relationship between wisdom and truth. Wisdom is a product of the human mind, and therefore while what the god of death is saying seems to be wise, but it is not in fact the ultimate truth, because the ultimate truth in fact goes beyond wisdom, which is a mental construct. And in support of her arguments, she says that man, even in his present state of consciousness, in fact is dimly aware of something that goes beyond the mind, something that goes beyond what can be easily seen and heard. And not only man is dimly aware of some such thing, man in fact aspires to know more for it. So man in fact is groping for it, he looks for it, and this urge itself is enough evidence to show that man is destined to change and not stay as he is now forever. I'll read a few lines from page 632. All our earth starts from mud and ends in sky. So that is the trend of evolution. We may start with mud, but the end is sky. The end is much higher than where we start. And love that was once an animal's desire, then a sweet madness in the rapturous heart, an ardent comradeship in the happy mind, becomes a wide spiritual yearning's space. So this evolutionary thrust is illustrated through the process of love. Love may start in the mud, love may start as an animal's desire, but then it transforms itself into a sweet madness in the rapturous heart. That is a passion, and then from there it moves on to an ardent comradeship in the happy mind. That is a sense of togetherness, a sense of companionship, a sense of intimacy, an urge to do something for each other. And from there on, it moves to become a wide spiritual yearnings space. So the two souls unite, their egos dissolve, and the two become one, and they can cooperate with each other in each other's spiritual growth. So that is the progression of love and the rungs through which human love can grow, and that itself indicates what human beings can become and what form earth can take. The earth can become heaven. A lonely soul passions for the alone. The heart that loved man thrills to the love of God. A body is his chamber and his shrine. A lonely soul passions for the alone. A lonely soul, the human soul, has an intense aspiration for the alone, alone with a capital A, for the divine. The heart that loved man thrills to the love of God. So the heart that begins with human love, the heart that begins with loving a human being, now thrills to the love of God, now has a similar love for God and is thrilled by it. A body is his chamber and his shrine. In fact, the human body is nothing but the chamber and the shrine of God itself. So this is the evolutionary process which Savitri uses to argue that while what the god of death is arguing may be true for the present, it does not mean that that is how it is destined to be forever. But then the god of death does not give up. It uses yet another strategy, and the next strategy that it uses is that matter and spirit have always been eternal foes. They are opposed to each other, the two can never be one. Now this is the type of argument that we find in various interpretations of Vedanta itself, and Aurobindo brings them out here to indicate that one can take the stand that since the all-pervasive spirit of the divine is the ultimate truth, the rest of the world and worldly life, which has a rather fleeting, fragile and flimsy character, is not in fact true and is not worthy of interest. On the other hand, the materialist may deny the presence of the spirit of the divine in matter and may say that only what I can see and hear is what exists. If I do not see it, it does not exist. And this is what has been brought out in just a couple of lines on page 635. Where matter is all, their spirit is a dream. Now this is the position of the materialist who denies the spirit. Where matter is all, their spirit is a dream. So the materialist thinks that what I see is matter and that is all that exists, and all this talk of the spirit is a dream, something which is unrealistic, something which is non-existent, and it is the figment of imagination. So where matter is all, their spirit is a dream. But then being aware of the spirit by itself does not in fact lead us to the whole truth. If all are the spirit, matter is a lie. Now this is the stand taken by the ascetic who refuses to see the reality of matter. Once he has seen the reality of the spirit, he starts thinking that matter is a lie, it is an illusion, it is a falsehood. So if all are the spirit, matter is a lie. So then where lies the truth? The truth lies in seeing the spirit of the divine in matter. So in fact, matter and spirit are not eternal foes, because matter is also a manifestation of the divine. Then yet another strategy that the god of death uses is to show that human beings have tried all types of methods, all types of strategies to change things on earth, and everything has failed so far. Be it science, be it philosophy, be it different systems of political administration, education and religion, everything has failed. And therefore, what Savitri is visualizing is also destined to fail. Now, the reason why all these previous attempts have failed is because the human consciousness has not changed much, and with the best of ideas have also been defeated by the egoistic tendencies of man. And that is why these mental constructs, which start with the best of intentions, in fact have all failed to root out, to eradicate evil, suffering, misery and death from earth. Now what Savitri is working for is something radical. She is working for a change in the level of human consciousness, and when the affairs of the world will be conducted from a higher plane of consciousness, all these evils are sure to disappear, and therefore this revolution, which is more revolutionary than any revolution conceived by man so far, is not destined to fail like the previous revolutions. Then god of death adopts yet another strategy, and that is, don't try to upset the established order. The attraction of the stability that comes from the way things have been going on for a long time, the stability that comes from a conventional approach, by trying to stick to the conventions, by not trying to think of anything new. So he is trying to present her with the temptations of that stability. But then Savitri says that I do not want that type of a calm that comes from stagnation. And in fact, the world has not been stagnating. It has been a very active place. It has been evolving all along, and that is what shall continue, and that is what she has come here to accelerate. So now when all these arguments fail, then finally it just comes down to one power pitted against the other. And the god of death tells Savitri, show me your power, and it is now my power versus your power. Are you powerful enough to break the laws of God, to break the laws which have made death inevitable so far? And along with that, he also tries to present her once again some temptations and tells her that you are indeed great, but then why do you want to waste your potential on trying to change the laws of God? Why don't you be in peace and enjoy the salvation that comes from this type of knowledge which you already have? But then Savitri tells him that the God that you are talking about, whose laws you are talking about, is the God that is different from the one that I have in mind. In fact, you do not understand God. And again, in a couple of lines, Savitri tells him the God that she is visualizing. She says, all contraries are aspects of God's face. So all these contraries, good and evil, and all the dualities of life are in fact also the two different aspects of God's face itself. The many are the innumerable one. The multiplicity of the universe is at its root basically one. So although it seems to be innumerable, it is in fact a manifestation of the one. The one carries the multitude in his breast, and therefore the universe, characterized by its multiplicity, plurality and differentiation, is nothing but that one divine, and that is the God that I understand. That's what Savitri says. Then death brings out one very important truth, and that is that what you may be saying may be true, and it may also be the highest of knowledge, but truth and knowledge are impotent without power and might. And therefore, show me who you are. Do you have that power and might to put into practice the truth and the knowledge that you are talking about? And at this stage, the divine descends into Savitri, and Savitri reveals herself. And the form that she reveals is that of a small figure, but all the wide spaces around her become the outer robe of her soul. So this is the type of Virat Roop, the type of Roop that Krishna reveals to Arjuna. That is the type of revelation that now Savitri presents to the god of death to reveal who she really is. And this is further strengthened by now Savitri no more speaking, no more arguing with the god of death, but God's voice itself intervening and talking about the truths similar to the ones that Savitri had been talking about so far. Now that the god of death had seen who truly Savitri is and heard the voice of the divine, it knew what was to be known, but all the same refused to know. He saw but refused to see, and after a bit of last-ditch obstinacy, disappeared and fled. So while the type of arguments that the god of death gives in this confrontation sound very realistic because they are quite in keeping with our ordinary experience, and therefore the god of death could easily argue that what Savitri is thinking about is totally unrealistic and she is a dreamer. But all the same, Savitri wins because she has stronger arguments which are based not on the mind, not on ordinary reason, but arguments which are based on the fundamental truths of existence, on the deepest and the highest truths discovered by the seers and mystics when they are at the state of their peak spiritual experience.